Hi, Keisha. Welcome to the Beyond Bears podcast. We're so thrilled to have you here today.
Hi, thank you. I'm glad to be here.
Awesome. Well, let's dive right in. So, you've achieved tremendous career successes, and I'd love to hear more about the highlights of your career journey and what is the biggest lesson you've learned.
I think the biggest lesson I've learned is that I can accomplish anything. I think I have the propensity to underestimate myself. I think when I first started my career, I really underestimated myself. If you'd asked me 20 years ago if I thought I'd be here, I probably would have said no. So the biggest lesson I learned is that I can accomplish anything and not to underestimate what I'm capable of.
That's so interesting that you share that because we hear that so often from the work that we do at Beyond Barriers about really high performing and high achieving women that have consistently underestimated themselves or have struggled with self doubt, and therefore it limits the size of your dreams and your ambitions sometimes until you learn that actually that doesn't have to stop you. So, for you, what were some of the reasons why you underestimated yourself, and how did you actually overcome that?
Well, I think some of the reasons are societal, right?
Hmm.
An African American woman, an out lesbian, right? And so
Hmm.
those three identities, a woman, being Black, and being an out lesbian, right? You don't necessarily climb to the top of people's hierarchy in terms of expectations of you. So
Yeah.
I was constantly underestimated. And so a part of you starts believing that underestimation of your
Mm,
skills or your skill set. And you also go unnoticed a lot.
mm,
And so that also makes you doubt and underestimate yourself. So what I had to start doing was one, not believing that, believing in the lessons that I was taught as a young girl from my mother and my aunt and my grandmother, who were all African American women who were underestimated and overlooked,
mm,
and standing up and being a bit
mhm,
louder about what I could do and what I could accomplish, being a bit more pronounced and intentional about
mhm.
where I directed my energy and my skill sets, but letting people know what I was capable of and not
Yeah,
being afraid of that.
that's powerful. Now, you're also in an industry that is very male dominated and fairly traditional in many ways, right? And Wall
Yes.
Street and financial services. And here you are, the very top of one of the leading organizations. Walk us through sort of how did you gain clarity on that career path? Like, did you know this is what you wanted to do? How did it unfold?
No, I don't think I knew this is what I wanted to do, right? Like
Mhm,
I think I initially knew I wanted to lead, but didn't know what I wanted to lead. And I
mm,
knew I wanted to lead because that is my personality. I've always been the kind of mouthy, outspoken one. Even as a kid, I was always the one directing the games, right? And I was like, no, we're going to do it this way. Let me organize it. Let me show you how to do it. So I always inherently understood that I could lead things and felt comfortable in that position. And my mother and the women in my family and the men in my family fostered that, right? And
mm,
let me lead and let me talk. So I think I didn't know that I would lead a talent management organization or lead diversity, equity, inclusion, or lead corporate social responsibility and ESG reporting. I didn't think of all that, but I knew I wanted to, I knew I had emotional intelligence. I knew I was relationship driven. I knew I was execution driven, right? I knew those things um, inherently were positives for me. So I think I also raised my hand a lot for things that were coming up and difficult
mhm,
assignments in the organization
mm.
to say I want to do that, right? Give that to me. And I didn't shy away from those opportunities. I viewed them as opportunities. Other people viewed them as kind of landmines. I didn't view it as that. So just kind of raising your
Wow.
hand, being outspoken about what you
Mhm,
want to do has helped me.
wow. So as you've taken each of these steps in your career, you know, how did your specific sort of expertise emerge from that? And what's interesting in your role today is that you not only lead talent management but also DEI. So share sort of how did those converge, and what do you see as the most powerful aspect of having those integrated?
Well, sometimes, people, I explain it this way. When you're 19 or 18 years old, choosing your college major and going through school and learning, you think you know what you want and you think you know what you want to do.
Hmm.
And sometimes that college education or that degree or advanced degree aligns with the work you ultimately do, and sometimes it doesn't. For
Hmm.
me, it did not initially. So I went into financial
And what was your
services.
degree in?
I'll tell you, I went to financial services and worked in a traditional finance career, middle office, back office, broker dealer operations, mutual funds company, then ultimately came to DTCC, worked in technology, worked in product management, in the wealth management division, worked in the risk division of DTCC, and then came into diversity, equity, and inclusion space. And also, that was kind of my side hustle. I was part of the ERGs, I was part of the Diversity Council. And then I got this role. Well, my degree is actually in organizational behavior and leadership and
Wow.
management studies. So it's kind of a full circle moment for me that my HR degree is now being used in the role that I have for talent management and diversity, equity, and inclusion. And I think that was a good thing, because I've got years and years of experience of being in the business and understanding what it's like to be an employee, moving through talent management, onboarding, talent development, leadership development, all of that through the organization. And now I have that experience, and I couple it with the information I learned a long time ago with my degree, and it helps me lead better. It helps me make better decisions, make more informed, experiential decisions.
It seems like you followed your curiosity around different areas and gained experience, in so many aspects of the business, especially front of the house, which I'm sure serves you as you are in an HR function, and relate more to the people that you're responsible for. Steve Jobs had that quote about all the dots connect looking back. And this is so much of that, right? Like all of the dots connect looking back.
Absolutely, right? For years I thought, oh, I'll never use this degree, but okay. And here I am.
So what would you say to someone that is, in a certain career path, but is feeling lost and just not sure about, like they just don't have that certainty or clarity about, is this the right path? Am I living my purpose? Is this what I'm supposed to do? And often we find folks in their mid-career stage go through that sort of almost like a career crisis of sorts, right? You have a certain number of years of experience in something, but you don't know, is this it? So what would you say to someone who's sort of not feeling that total certainty or clarity?
Well, you have to be ruthlessly honest with yourself about what you're good at, right? And that's hard. There's certain things that I'm just not very good at, right? And so it's helpful to take in, and that can change over time. So it's helpful to take inventory of that periodically, right? You should also have a career roadmap. And it doesn't have to be this kind of complex document, right? It should be something that you've said, here's where I ultimately want to get. Here's the steps I outlined on that journey. Check in with yourself to see where you are on that journey. Sometimes you're going to have to pivot. Sometimes you're going to have to change some of those steps. Sometimes you're going to have to change some of the detail in those steps. But compare that to what you now think you're good at. Compare those steps and change it and adjust if you need to. But you also should solicit trusted feedback if you're struggling with where you are, right? So look at your roadmap, be honest with yourself about what you're good at, but then also get feedback from trusted sources. And all feedback is not good feedback, right? Some people have very different motivations for giving you feedback. Make sure it's a trusted source. Maybe it's a sponsor, maybe it's a mentor, just someone who is in the position that you might want to be in or ultimately get to, that's on your career map, maybe talk to someone in that position and compare, right? And say,
Mm,
what do you, someone who's seen you in action as well, what do you think I'm good at, right? What do you think
mm,
my opportunities are? And then just kind of hunker down and rethink things if you need to,
yeah.
right? Things, if I look back at some of my career roadmap, it doesn't go like this.
Yeah.
That, it's all over
Yeah.
the place, right?
Yeah.
And you have to accept that.
And sometimes it's just knowing your North Star. And like you said, you got to know yourself. Self-awareness is one of the most important things, because
Yes.
when you align to your strengths and passions, and stop fixating on your weaknesses and things that it's just not your path,
Right.
it's easier to let go and double
Right.
down on what you're great at. So,
Right.
but that also speaks to decision making, right? At some point you just got to make a decision. You can't be
Hmm.
waffling
Hmm.
and going back and forth. So your career has involved a variety of very critical positions
Hmm.
with important decisions and risk taking, right? The nature of the business that you're in and the roles you've had. Share with us kind of, do you have a certain framework for decision making and risk taking that has guided you either personally and professionally? When moments of complexity where you're faced with, gosh, this is a pretty pivotal decision. How do you process it?
First, I panic.
I love that.
To be honest, completely honest, I panic. I get the sweaty armpits, the back of the hairs in the back of my neck stand up. I'm like, but then I center myself, right? And I understand in that moment that I need to make a pivotal decision. I try to get as much information as possible, right? And to get as much information as possible, you have to be a good listener. I cannot stress enough, being in a leadership position, people coming to you with information and wanting you to make important decisions, big, small decisions. Listen, because people are giving you information. And if they're not giving you the information you need, ask for more, right?
Mm,
Don't be afraid to say, okay, this. And then there are going to be times where you're going to have very little information. Um, I trust my gut.
mm,
I trust the principles or my core values that kind of guide me, core values of integrity and empathy and
mm,
listening and humility and accountability, right? And I'm not
mm,
afraid to take ownership of a bad decision, because I've made bad decisions, right? I've made
mm,
decisions that I'm like, that probably wasn't the best. Um, but I would say the most important thing is having information and listening to
mm,
that information, right? I've seen a
yeah.
lot of leaders get a lot of information and because of ego, uh, don't listen to it, right?
Mm,
And that will lead to a bad decision. I surround myself with people who I think that are smarter than me, to
mm.
give me that information so that I can make those pivotal, critical decisions correctly. But listening. Mhm.
Wow, that's great. So you also indicated like that initial sense of panic and
Mhm.
fear, in those situations. Now, there are so many different types of fear sometimes that we don't even know about, or limiting beliefs that hold us back. And um, when we're not even aware of them, they can be bigger obstacles because you don't know the enemy you're fighting
Mhm.
against. So,
Mhm.
how do you generally deal with fear or limiting beliefs? And I would imagine that, just given societal conditioning and factors and systemic bias, there's probably lots of different types of fears and limiting beliefs that, are part of our lived experience. How have you coped with that, or how do you overcome
Well, I've had a lifetime of that, right? Uh, I talked about before how people have, um, not expected a lot from me and their expectations were
that?
lower. Um, I honestly block it out. I
Mm,
ignore it. I, again, centering myself and understanding what I'm capable of.
mm,
And whatever your opinion is of me really, really doesn't matter.
mm,
I am here to perform a task, to do a job, And I talked about my core values of showing up, being authentic, being accountable, doing the right thing, and acting ethically. I let that guide me, and I don't really care about what you think
Mm,
or don't think. And again, my mother always said, people are going to expect the worst of you. People are going to expect, if they don't expect the worst, they're going to expect very little. Show
mm.
them each and every time that you are so much better than that.
Wow, that's powerful. I love that. That is incredible. And you certainly have, Keisha. It's great to
I
see that.
I hope so.
Mm,
I honestly, and when people, you said North Star. My North Star for me is not my CEO. It's not who I report to. It's my mom, my
mm,
aunt who cleaned houses for people and had a third grade education, but was the best at running a household and balancing checkbooks, right? My great grandmother who was a sharecropper, my mother who was a sharecropper, right? I am my
mhm.
ancestors' wildest dreams, I think is the saying. So that's my
Wow.
North Star. That's who I'm trying to impress, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Not anyone else.
It must have been an incredible inspiration to grow up with what sounds like, a family of very strong women.
Mhm.
What are some of the what's sort of most pivotal lesson you have gleaned from their lives and their wisdom that guides you?
That life was not going to be easy. It wasn't going to be easy because of the various identities that I occupied. I remember when I came out to my mother, she was, it wasn't the typical, oh my God, you're a lesbian. Oh no. It was, she was upset because she was like, your life is going to be so much harder. You're already a Black woman, right?
Mm,
She instantly, even though she had no experience with the LGBTQIA community, she
mm,
knew that that was going to be an additional barrier for me.
yeah.
Um, so the thing that I learned from them the most is life was going to be difficult, but that doesn't mean it can steal your joy, right? You have
Mm,
to find joy in everything, and you can, no matter how difficult, right? My aunt cleaned houses on her hands and knees all day long and made $10, $15, right? She knew she was being undervalued, but it didn't stop her from showing up and doing the best she could. And it didn't
mm,
stop her from enjoying her life outside of that menial, or what some people perceived as menial work. She took
mm,
pride and joy in making people's homes
mm,
beautiful, right?
mm.
Find the
And
joy.
and there's such a powerful lesson in that of, that pride in how, what you do and how you do
Hmm.
it and how you show up,
Hmm.
regardless of what role or position
That's right.
you hold.
That's
It's
right.
that is an internal choice, we all have to make.
That's right. That's right. That's
So
right.
as you look to you know, the future, coming
Hmm.
from that legacy that you carry and the future of everyone that you're inspiring. What's most important to you as you look ahead and think about the world we're living in and what it's becoming and your role as a leader and change agent? What's important for you in that?
That I create opportunities for others, that I create opportunities for others, especially others that look like me, that look like you, that
Mm,
don't look like the expectation of excellence, right? That
mm,
look like others, that come from other backgrounds, that have backgrounds like my aunt or my great grandmother or your great grandmother or
mm,
your family, right? That I don't cross the bridge and raise the bridge and
mm.
leave everybody behind. That I've low not only have I let the bridge down, but I've lowered it to let more, or broadened it to let more
Yeah.
people come across that bridge, right? I just want to be a change agent and create opportunity for others who are like me, because, you know, I'm not that special. There are lots of little Black, brown, yellow girls that are like me, you
Hmm.
know, who are better than me, who've got wonderful ideas, who who are just waiting for the right opportunity, who are waiting for the right mentor, the right sponsor to show that they
Mhm.
can shine as well. So it's about
Yeah.
creating opportunity.
Well, that's exactly what our mission is at Beyond Barriers, is
Mhm.
democratizing access. You and I
Yes.
talked about earlier, where it's not necessarily lack of motivation or talent, but sometimes it's just lack of access. And when you don't
Yep.
have access to the right resources and relationships, it's hard to navigate towards your dreams. And I think for those of us that have that access, have the platform, and have the visibility, it's a responsibility to lift up others and create a
Yep.
path for that.
I learned about access very early. I went to a public school. I grew up in Bed-Stuy, Brooklyn. An underserved community,
Hmm.
largely African American at that point. And I went to a public school, and I was a good student because my mother required that of her kids, despite the lack of resources in that school, and the teachers did their best. So I was in a gifted class, and at that point they had programs for minority students from underserved communities to go to private
Hmm.
schools. And so I was selected and had to test and interview, et cetera, to go to this private school in Brooklyn Heights, which was a very different neighborhood for me. So it's about access, right?
Mm.
And I learned that because of the three, there were four girls that were picked out of my sixth grade class to go to the school. I watched all of my other classmates who didn't qualify for various reasons to go to the school, whether it was test scores, whether it was economics, whatever. I watched them succumb
Mm.
to environmental factors, um, early, motherhood, lack of access to continue their education, lack of
Hmm.
money, whatever, and not go in as far in life as the four of us who had
Hmm.
access to the school and the
Yeah.
superior education, and then access to college prep courses and access to now college. And the only
Hmm.
difference was that access, was that ability to think about how much further we could go in life, right? Versus
Hmm.
that limited view that the schools offered in my underserved community. So I learned about access in my teens and have
Yeah.
carried that lesson with me.
That's a powerful story, because what that shares is, not only the impact that access can have on your career path or opportunities, but also how access changes the scale of your vision, which is
Yes.
sometimes the most powerful thing, because we don't give ourselves permission to dream if our environment is not conducive to that. And as
Correct.
soon as the environment shifts, your vision expands, even if your skills don't. And that
Correct.
bigger vision then pulls you forward. And it's so indicative of that. And I think you and I both have shared lived experiences of that,
Yeah.
where access
Yeah.
changed that. So
Yep.
how do you keep yourself at the forefront of uh, you know new skills, new competencies, as the world is changing so fast, where the shelf life of skills is just 18 months or so, right? Like everything's changing fast. Anything we are an expert
Hmm.
in today, it's going to be
Hmm.
outdated by next year. Um,
Hmm.
my question is specifically from the point of view of being a busy executive with a lot of demands on your um, time and your life. I read an interesting stat that said, as much as, 40% of the nature of work is going to change, and yet the average person spends no more than 5 minutes dedicated to their own skill development. Now, you're also in the talent business. What are you doing? How do you keep yourself learning and growing?
I am intellectually curious, number one, right?
Mhm.
So I love learning, except coding. I don't want to learn coding because I'm not good at that. Talk about learning, knowing what you're good at. I took a coding
Yeah.
course in college and dropped out the first week. I was like, oh, no, this is not for me. But being intellectually curious about things that are emerging keeps me aware, right? I
Mhm.
If I could go to school full time and someone paid me, I would get 5 PhDs because I just love learning, right? So having intellectual curiosity and a love of learning, but back to my point around listening and hiring smart people. I have wonderful leaders around me. I have a wonderful team, right? And I listen to them because they're more attuned to
Mhm.
a lot of things that I'm not. And so when they bring ideas to me, I listen to it. When they send me an article, I read it, right? And I have they know I'm an active listener. And so the door is open for them to give me
Mhm.
or bring me or impart their wisdom onto me. I don't see it as one way. I see
Mm.
it as a dual relationship that I can
Yeah.
make decisions and give them information, but I see a lot more information flowing my way. So it's listening and being intellectually curious, right?
Yeah. But also surrounding yourself with people
Smart
that
people.
smart people, and but also diverse points of views that you can
Yes, yes,
gain all of that
absolutely.
perspective. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. And listening to those perspectives, right?
Yeah.
I see a lot of people say I surround myself with diverse perspectives, but then they don't listen to them. Right.
Mm. Yeah. It's a lot harder to unlearn and let go of the biases and dogma than it is to
Yes.
learn new things. But
Yep.
sometimes you got to empty the cup to fill it.
Yep.
You know, speaking of relationships and people, what has helped you develop valuable relationships and a professional network, in your career?
I obviously you can tell I'm passionate, right?
Yeah.
And so that's that's how I show up
Hmm.
always with energy and passion and an attitude that I want to do this. Um, I think a lot of times, especially women, we're a bit afraid to show up with that passion. Is for me
Hmm.
as a woman of color, right? That passion is sometimes perceived as aggressive or
Hmm.
all of those tropes. Um,
Yeah.
but I am committed to excellence in all of its forms. And I let people know by my work, by my actions, by my not just my words, but my work and my actions that I am committed to that excellence. So it is not a question for them whether they should sponsor me, whether they
Mm.
should let me enter into their network. They want me there because they want
Mm.
my perspective, because they know that I care and they know that I'm passionate about it and that I'm going to do the best that I possibly can. Um,
Mm.
I think that's always been if you talk about a brand, that's always
Hmm.
been my brand. If you give me something to do, I'm going to be thoughtful, I'm going to be strategic about it, but I'm also going to get it done. I'm going to do
Hmm.
whatever I need to do to get it done. Right.
Yeah. So speaking of getting it done, how have you mentioned that execution is one of your, superpowers, right? What has helped you be really effective at execution, especially across your personal and professional
I don't overcomplicate things.
life? Mm.
Analysis paralysis, Lord, Gantt chart, this, that. Some sometimes we human beings
Yeah.
make things much more complicated than they need to be. Not saying some things are very
Mm.
complex. Uh, so I try not to make things overcomplicated. That if I would say that's the superpower for me in terms of execution. But I also you have to understand your audience or your
Mm.
client or your customer and who you're doing this for and what they're trying to get to or what they're trying to accomplish, and never lose sight of that in
Hmm.
analysis and
Yeah.
solutioning and all of that, right? Not just don't overcomplicate things. Sometimes most things in life, you know, I I tell people, and I have these sayings, and that comes from my family Southern background. Southerners always have these sayings. I I tell people, you don't have a patient on the table. No one's going to die if you don't get this right, right? That is a complex decision. If you have a
Yeah.
patient on the table whose chest is open and you're trying to transplant an organ, right? That's complex. What we do day to day, I'm not trying to diminish it, but do you know what I'm saying? Put
Yeah.
it in context.
Yeah.
Also, a lot of times when women are struggling with um, decisioning, or they're struggling with how should I do this? Oh my God, and making things more complex. And I say this a lot to mothers. Like,
Yeah.
how many kids do you have at home? Two. Okay. you are raising future human beings to occupy this earth. No more important job than that, right? Do you put this much decision into what you do, this much thinking into what you're doing for them? They're like, no, I do this. So if you know that raising a little person to grow into a responsible, ethical human being is more important than what you're doing here, why are you tearing your hair out for this, right?
That is really good perspective. Yeah,
We just
you're absolutely
overcomplicate things so much. There's no greater role than being a parent, right? And raising future generations, right? And some stuff we just kind of like, we're like, okay, you go ahead and do that. Yep, go do it, right?
yeah. And how do you keep yourself grounded every day? What helps you take care of yourself?
My family, my wife,
Mm.
my mother, my sister, my brother, they don't care. I'm an executive. I'm still, I'm just Keisha, the talkative middle child. And they, and they let me know it all the time. We have group texts and, we're ribbing each other. We just keep it light. I'm
Yeah,
still, the talkative middle child, the one who wouldn't shut up, the one who's
yeah.
always late to pick people up to everything. they,
Yeah.
that's how I stay grounded, right? No one
But
in my family takes me seriously. They don't, I'm not an executive. I'm just Keisha. Yeah.
I love the joy that exudes. It's very much like your family says, right? Find joy in everything every
Yes,
day.
yes,
Beautiful.
yes, yes, yes.
All right. Well, let's dive into the lightning round
Yep.
questions,
Hmm.
so our audience can get to know you at this level. So, um, what book has greatly influenced you?
There are a lot because I like to read, but the one that's probably most recent is The Warmth of Other Suns by Isabel Wilkerson. And it's the story of three African Americans and the Great Migration from the South, where 6
Mm,
million African Americans started leaving the South in the early 20th century and moving north. And it's my family's story, but she follows these three individuals. One left for a better opportunity, one left because he was about to be lynched because he was doing civil rights work, and another woman again left for another opportunity. And that was my family's story about leaving
wow.
the South and looking for economic prosperity, looking for the American dream, but also fleeing terror, right?
Mm,
So it's a wonderful, well-researched, true book. And if anyone wants to know about the African American history in the U.S.,
yeah.
I would say read it. It's wonderful, wonderful.
I think looking back and learning from history is so important as we look forward and encounter
Hmm.
many
Hmm.
similar patterns emerging,
Yep,
and all that we will have to step up to again.
yep, yep, yep.
What's your favorite quote, or saying?
Well, my favorite author is Toni Morrison, and anything she
Mm,
said is just, I love it. She just gems just flew out of her mouth and onto paper as well. So there's two quotes from her that I love. One is kind of cheeky. It's but it's not cheeky. It's truthful, and
mm.
it says, if you want to fly, you got to give up the sh blank t that weighs you down, right? And you do.
Love it.
Nothing could be more truthful. And
Yeah.
the other one though is, and it's for this one is more applicable for leaders, right?
Hmm.
As you enter positions of power, dream a little before you think, right?
Mm,
And I find that for me, when I'm thinking about decisions, when I'm struggling with something, when I'm, mulling over things and thinking about where to go, just in life or whatever, a lot of times the solution comes to me in my dreams. Honestly,
mm,
it's in those it's in those waking moments right before I wake up or sleeping, and I'll wake up.
mm,
Oh, I didn't think about it that way. Dream a little before you think, right?
mm. It's beautiful. Uh, what is a moniker or one word you would use to describe yourself?
Fierce.
Mm, I can see that. I love it. It's totally on.
I'm fierce. Yeah. Oh yeah.
What
Yeah.
What is the one change you implemented that made your life better?
Trying to get rid of negative self-talk, right? And
Mm,
I'm still trying to get rid of it, right? Again,
yeah,
back to women are taught to doubt themselves on so many levels.
yeah,
making sure that I'm affirming myself, making sure that I'm saying, you got this,
Yeah.
girl, you could do this,
Yeah.
breathe, it's going to be okay. You're smart, you're capable, getting rid of the negative
Yeah.
self-talk, right?
Yeah. So true. So what power song would you walk onto stage with?
Oh my God, it's so hard, but I, I had to decide on one. I was like, okay, I'm Every Woman by Shaka Khan or Whitney
Yeah.
Houston. I love that song. It
Yes.
just, it's just so powerful. And it, back to my point about me believing that I can do anything, that reinforces that point that I can do anything. And
Yeah.
I think most women can do anything, just
That
anything.
is that is a very inspiring and powerful way
Mhm.
to conclude this interview. I mean, everything you shared, Keisha, has been filled with wisdom and
Thank you.
inspiration for our audience. So I'm so excited for them to learn from you. And we will continue to cheer you on as you keep rising higher, but most importantly, letting the ladder down and lifting up others as you have been doing. So thank you for your service. Thank
Yes.
you for your leadership. And thank you for being on this show.
No, thank you for having me. It's been a pleasure. It's been a pleasure. Thank you.